Story 1. I worked at a hardware store and was recently given a promotion to a position that receives bonuses if sales goals are met. Being the new person on the team, some of my coworkers decided that I was the one to constantly pawn work onto. Normally, I'm happy to help out my team, and customer needs are important to me, but they would have me put in a lot of the legwork for their own sales. It got to be exhausting, but I finally had enough when one of my sales was taken by another guy. He said he had to rework the sale in the system. Normally, when this happens, you can still give credit to the original salesperson in the system. It was only a $1,500 sale, but he chose to keep the sale for himself. I even had to confront him about it, as he didn't even tell me he did this. He had recently asked me to write up a sale for him again. This had happened several times, but after the previous one, I was frustrated. I wrote up the sale but left it so that I would get the credit and walked away with a $5,000 sale. He never had to rework any of my sales again. Story 2. The title might be a bit confusing, but I'll explain. I still work for the same company, but I used to do a different job. A few years ago, part of my job was to travel around and install or repair equipment that we either leased or sold to other companies. I enjoyed the traveling but didn't want to be on the road for longer than necessary. If I were driving and within a couple of hours of home, I would drive through lunch, get close to home, and grab some fast food locally to take home and eat off the clock. I did this for a long time, and no one ever said anything to me until one day I was called into human resources with my boss. They asked why I bought food on the company credit card in the same city where I live. I told them it was because I skipped lunch to get off the road sooner and off the clock to avoid wasting their money or the customers. They told me that I'm not allowed to do that anywhere close to home, so I asked how far out was not considered local, and they gave me a vague description, but I had an idea. Since I got paid the entire time I was traveling, I decided to comply and would not eat near my city. Rather than grab fast food and eat at home, I would stop at restaurants, sometimes fast food and sometimes a sit-down restaurant, take my time, eat, and then get back on the road. This meant I was still using the company credit card to pay for my food while still on the clock. In total, it probably added an hour or so to my traveling, considering getting off the road, finding somewhere to eat, ordering, eating, and getting back on the road. I don't think they ever noticed, but they never mentioned it to me again. Story 3. Backstory. I used to work a temporary job at a fish hatchery in the middle of nowhere in southeast Idaho. Specifically, we dealt with endangered sockeye salmon. I was very excited to start because this seemed very important to me in terms of salmonid recovery. Little did I know, the managers were the most horrific, unpleasant human beings I had yet to deal with. They were both males. I'm not generalizing about males, but this is relevant to the story. There were countless stories of mismanagement at this place, but I will stick to this humorous one. I didn't find out until later, but before I arrived, one of the other temporary workers had to clean out one of the restrooms from an unfortunate mess. As in, they had to pressure wash the mess in the front of the bowl. Yes, the manager of the hatchery made a mess and made other people clean it. Great leadership. So, onto the story. There are 2 restrooms in the main office area. For obvious reasons now, the ladies, which were the 3 of us not managers, wanted to have one of those restrooms designated as the ladies' restroom. The 2 restrooms were literally right next to each other in the hallway and were exactly the same. This shouldn't be an issue, right? No, the controlling manager said no. There was no reason to have 2 different restrooms. They should be used by everyone equally. So for weeks, we sat there, our desks were just down the hall from the restrooms, and watched him use them both, hearing the flush and then immediately seeing him exit. The other ladies got frustrated. I got frustrated and then creative. He wanted us all to use the restrooms equally. All right, we would use them equally. Before I start, I will say that I lived on site and thus opened up the building and got there before everyone else in the morning. Everything was done discreetly before dawn. So, I went to the nearest town after work one day, a 45-minute drive away, to the Walgreens. I purchased every female-oriented product they had and began my plan. I started small. I put a box of pads in one of the restrooms on the counter. Did the manager budge? He made it a point to now go only in that restroom. perfect and unsettling, but whatever. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I kept putting a product or two in there every few days, slowly and purposefully increasing the pressure. Next, I added bright red lipstick and other feminine products. This did not deter the manager. I escalated to spraying the most overpowering, flowery scents in there every morning and leaving the perfume bottles next to the sink. Still nothing except a, "Wow, it smells nice in there." Really, unbelievable. At this point, at least the assistant manager was avoiding this restroom like the plague. Alright. By this time, we had been having fun with this for about 2 weeks or so with minimal results. Time for the big move. I took the most obvious bottle of a feminine hygiene product I could find and sprayed the contents into the toilet, leaving the empty bottle right on top of the toilet next to the box that very clearly indicated what it was. Next to that, I placed an open container of feminine cream that had obviously been used recently. That may have been enough, but I also sprinkled some of the pads all over the sink, after opening a few for maximum effect. We sat and waited like predators. On cue, upon arriving at work, the manager went to the specific restroom. Anticipation. After about 3 or 4 full seconds, he came out and, without looking at any of us, quickly shuffled into the other restroom, right next to the first one. This was the one we initially proposed as the male bathroom before any of this occurred. I think we were all trying not to laugh, but I don't remember specifics, just the feeling of victory. The manager did not speak to us for at least a week, which was more than we asked for, and didn't look at us for at least another week or so, and he never went into that restroom again, despite us removing our products as they had done their job. It was a smooth and swift finish, and our objectives were met. I realized that I may have opened up a conversation about the female-male restroom debate, and this was not the intent. This happened about 6 or 7 years ago, and the only point was to get the manager and assistant manager their own restroom. Story 4. To understand the setting, you need to know what a cross-docker is. It's a logistics company that ships less than trailer loads. So let's say that you have a customer with 2 pallets for City A, 3 pallets for City B, and 1 pallet for City C. You go to the customer, pick up all their shipments, then put them in with the other orders for their respective cities. The freight moves across the dock into its destination container. With this arrangement, you spend the day running around, picking up orders. Late in the afternoon, the loads start to arrive at the warehouse, and the fun begins. The dock crew worked from 4 p.m. to midnight, sometimes later, depending on volume. Let's call my friend Charlie. He was a temporary worker in the dispatch office. When he was hired, it was staffed by the old manager, the manager's nephew, and a day dispatcher who set up the pickups. That was the day shift. Charlie was on the afternoon shift, along with 2 data entry clerks. So the dock would load a container destined for a particular city. They would hand the folder with the waybills for each of the shipments in the container to the data entry clerks, who would get it into the server and generate a manifest. Most of these containers were intermodal and were shipped out by train. You've seen ships with containers piled on them? Same thing, except for domestic shipments. They would use 53-foot containers rather than the 40-foot containers you see on boats. Charlie would take the folder and then verify that everything in the container was headed for the correct city. Check for temperature-controlled freight. Check for dangerous goods and make sure the container was properly labeled. Then he would go online and check the container into the railway system. When Charlie was hired, they were doing about 5 to 10 rail shipments a shift. He was told to copy and paste the information from the railway's webpage into a report, then send a heads-up email at the conclusion of the shift to each of the partner terminals in their respective destination cities. By the time he'd been there for 2.5 years, that volume had increased to about 40 to 50 loads per shift. The day shift might handle 3 or 4, and the manager and nephew would use the copy and paste routine. But Charlie didn't have time for that. His brother was a bit of a techie, so when Charlie noticed that he could export to Excel a report from the railway site, he got his brother to write a script that would gather the relevant information and generate reports for each of the cities. It would do this in a few seconds. Charlie approached the manager and asked for a position with the company, as it would be a raise, and he would get health benefits. The manager dragged his feet and finally said, no. Charlie thought about it for a bit, then told the manager, I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off, starting Monday. Call the agency and get them to send someone else over. The manager was furious, but he didn't have a leg to stand on. He wasn't Charlie's employer, so he had no authority to deny Charlie the time off. Charlie was in good standing with the agency, one of their top workers. Temporary workers aren't always reliable, so anyone who kept his head down and caused no issues was valued, and the agency backed him up. Charlie had friends on the dock, and they kept him informed. The first problem was that the replacement the agency sent had no experience, and the manager had to train him from the ground up. This resulted in many phone calls throughout the evening to the manager, which made him more and more irritable as the days went on. The second problem was the reports. This company was on the West Coast and was shipping across the country. Each destination location had a meeting scheduled at 7 a.m. in their respective time zones, where they would review the incoming shipments. The dock would shut down sometimes at 1 a.m., and the new temporary worker needed to get the reports out by 3 or 4 a.m., but the copy and paste routine was taking too long. This led to the third problem, overtime. The temporary worker was running 12 to 14-hour shifts. The manager delegated his nephew to work afternoons to help out. That meant the manager had to cover his nephew's workload as well as his own. The nephew was not happy either, as he was a sports fanatic and played hockey several times a week. He had to miss his games. Even with the nephew on the job, the reports took forever to get out, and there were mistakes made. Temperature-controlled freight was sent dry, and in one case, they had to send the dock foreman racing to the rail yard to label a container before the yard would accept it. After a week or so, Charlie took the opportunity to distribute his resume and put the manager down as a reference. Now, the manager was getting calls about Charlie and realized that Charlie might not come back. He was under a lot of pressure from all directions, and his only way out was to put Charlie on the payroll. By this time, the agency had sent 2 temporary workers to cover what Charlie used to do, with the oversight of the nephew. The manager called Charlie in for an interview. "Okay, Charlie, we'll put you on the payroll. We'll pay you the same as the agency paid you, and we'll give you benefits." "No, thanks. I have other interested companies that are offering more." "Fine. We'll put you on salary and increase it by 10%. "Again, no thanks. I won't accept a salaried position unless I get to go home after 40 hours. If you need me to stay late, you need to pay me overtime." "How much per hour are you looking for?" "Well, I know what you pay the agency for my services, and right now you have 2 temps working to cover the shift. Tell you what, pay me what you were paying the agency, and add the benefits, and you have a deal." "What? That's almost double what you were making before." And that's what other companies are offering. You can cut what you're paying out to the agency by half, and there won't be as many mistakes. The nephew can strap on his skates, and you can watch television all evening without getting phone calls, or things can continue the way they're going. What's it going to be? Charlie got hired on, made a good chunk more money, and as a bonus, negotiated 3 weeks of vacation a year. Story 5. Certified nurse's aide in a long-term care facility. I'm a night shift supervisor, which is a position that is unique to this company, in a nursing home. My shift is from 6 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., and there is always an issue between the day shift and night shift. Always. I've been doing my absolute best to help the day shift and ease some of the tension between the 2 shifts. A couple of weeks ago, we were short-staffed. There was only 1 certified nurse's aide in each of our 4 halls and 2 nurses between the 4 halls. I told my staff to do the best they could. The important thing was to have the residents up for breakfast. If they could do vitals, great. If not, oh well, the day shift could handle it. The day shift strolled in, and one of the day shift's certified nurse's aides said to me, "Everybody better be up since vitals aren't done." I turned around and told her in a very stern tone, "There were only 4 of us last night. Next time we're that short, are you willing to come in at 4 a.m. to help?" She was speechless. The day shift supervisor arrived, and this is where my great idea came to mind. I couldn't help but chuckle inside as I saw her walk in and set down her stuff. I patiently waited until she turned to me and said, "How was your night?" We were at the nurse's station, and I told her, "There were only 4 of us last night. so I told them to focus on getting the residents up for breakfast. Okay, thank you. We can do the vitals, that's no problem. Also, it's against company policy to steal time, to be on the clock when you're not working, right? Yes, but everyone knows that. The next time I hear the day shift come in here and accuse the night shift of not doing anything, I'm sending the night shift home for stealing time. Now, I've been at this facility for 6 years, and 5 of those years were spent on the Alzheimer's dementia unit. I have a reputation for being thorough and using company policy to my advantage. They knew I wasn't kidding, and I guess word spread because it was the last time I ever heard the day shift say anything like that. The following night I came in, I let the night shift know to tell me if they ever made that claim again so I could send everyone home. If they're not busy, they don't need to be here. And since they're all super certified nurses' aides, they can do it themselves.